everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today I wanted to share with you all some of my favorite fall Instant Pot recipes. So this is a part of my kitchen that I use a lot. I find that this is a really good go-to. As a busy mom of four, it's kind of my default on days when I don't have time to stand over the stove and cook a long meal for supper, but yet I want to have something that is nutritious, that is tasty, that my family's going to want to eat. I find that the Instant Pot is what I use. I know a lot of people use their Instant Pots and they love them, and I also know of people who don't use them and haven't ever, haven't ever tried it. And so I just wanted to share some of my recipes that I like to use for this, and how that helps me in my day-to-day life. Like I say, sometimes these recipes, I won't necessarily call them quick, because I think every one that I'm going to show you today has to cook for at least an hour, but they all have one thing in common. I throw it on the Instant Pot, I turn it on, let it run. I can walk away and do whatever else I need to do during the time that it's cooking, and I can come back to a cooked meal. So that, for me, that is a win, because then I can think about it late afternoon, early evening, throw it in the Instant Pot, and then can walk away. And then when it's supper time, I can come back and know that I have supper ready. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, especially this time of year as it's cooling off. Sometimes we're thinking more about the cozy soup type foods that taste really good on the cooler days. So I'm going to take you through some of these recipes, and I hope you really enjoy them. Okay, so the first recipe that I want to share with you all is called 15 bean soup. And this one actually comes on the bean bag. When you buy this bag of mixed beans at the store, this is the recipe that's on the back. And it's really, really good. I make this one pretty frequently in the winter time. It's easy and really, really tasty. So we start out with these beans that I have actually soaked overnight. Ideally, you'd soak beans for up to about 24 hours. It just helps the casings around the beans break down so that your body can digest the beans better, helps to combat some of the negative effects that we see sometimes when we eat beans. So I always try to soak beans down. Now, there are days that it doesn't happen, but that's what I shoot for, is to be able to soak them at least overnight. And then I'm going to add an onion to this. This recipe is really quick. I think this is the only thing that I have to chop up to add to it. And then from there, it's just adding in some different seasonings and a can of tomatoes. And from there you just let it cook. But I really like this one. Again, it's easy for me to put together on a day when I don't have a whole lot of time. I can just kind of think ahead and go, okay, if I know that tomorrow is going to be crazy, I'm going to soak this bag of beans tonight, and then tomorrow I can spend 20 minutes standing here by the Instant Pot throwing everything together, and then I'll have supper and I can walk away and do something else. And that's, I guess, where I find the beauty of the Instant Pot, like I said earlier, is the fact that I don't have to stand here and babysit it the whole time that it is cooking. So there's that can of tomatoes, and just throw in, I think that's some chili powder, and then lemon juice and garlic. And then the one thing that I do add to this, so the recipe calls for a ham bone, or it even says you can use sausage if you want to do that. I like to buy a ham or a half a ham from the store, like a cured ham like you'd eat at Thanksgiving, and I will take that and cut it up into portion sizes and then refreeze it or freeze it and use that in cases like this. That way I can have a meat to add to this. So here it is, ready to go in the pot, and there's this ham. And I really like doing this because it adds not only the meat but also the flavoring, because the ham really complements bean dishes well, and it again adds some meat to it so that we're not just eating just beans, makes it go a little farther. And that's something that again, if I watch sales or different times of year when it is less expensive to buy the ham and then freeze it, it's really easy because I can put it in this pot completely frozen still, and it will thaw as the beans cook and turn out really good. And so then this will cook for about 40 minutes, and then all I have to do is pull the meat out, and at that point I will shred it up into bite-sized pieces. Sometimes I might have to use a knife and cut it up a little bit to make sure that it's small enough that my younger kids can chew it up good. But anyway, I will shred that meat up, and then you'll see here in a minute I'm going to add a seasoning packet that comes in the bag of beans. It pretty much, I call it a seasoning packet. It really just acts as a thickener to the soup. It's not really adding a whole lot of flavoring. I've even made it without it a couple of times, and we never even noticed the difference. So that is that. And then I'm going to put this meat back in here, and now it's ready to go in a bowl. And say this is one that everybody enjoys, and it's warm and perfect for a cool fall evening. And then here is that bag so y'all can see. And I have seen this particular bag at a lot of different stores, so I don't think you'll have any trouble finding it. I hope you give it a try. It certainly has been a winner for our family. The next recipe I am making is actually a brown rice and lentil soup. And this is one that originally was supposed to be done on the stovetop. And I used to make it on the stovetop, but then I decided to try it in the Instant Pot, again, because it's easier. And it is really, really wonderful in here because, when you cook rice or beans on the stove, you have to stir it very frequently or else it burns to the bottom and you end up with the nasty layer on the bottom. And it takes a lot of constant attention. But the beauty of you doing it this way is I can put it all in there, and as long as I make sure that the liquid made it down to the bottom of the pot when I add the liquid in at the end, it won't stick. And so I don't have to stir it, I don't have to mix it in, I can just dump it and then do a good mix once it is done cooking. So it's some brown rice, lentils, I'm adding tomatoes here, and this one I actually am able to fit a double batch of this soup in my Instant Pot. It gets it pretty full, but it works out well because then this one will actually feed us twice, and that's always good. One trade-off that I make that I would mention as I'm putting this together, because I try to focus on healthy foods, whole foods, we try to really limit the amount of super processed foods or prepared foods that I buy at the store. And so it makes it to where on the days that are more hectic, the days that I don't have as much time, I do not keep, things like frozen pizzas in the freezer or corn dogs for just a grab and go kind of a thing, just because I choose to not allow myself that, because I know if I kept it there that we would eat it because it would be easy. But I choose to not do that so that then we're eating a more nutritious meal. And because of that, it makes the days that are hectic, my go-to meals, what I call a go-to. Yes, there still is some labor involved. I still have to do some food prep, but it is a lot less than what I do on a normal day-to-day when I actually get to really work on making something from scratch, from start to finish, and being able to stand over the stove. And I do enjoy that. But again, I guess my point is that because we choose to eat the way that we do, because I would prefer to do this. My husband prefers to eat the better food too. We want to set the example for our kids that, that it is better to make the good choices most of the time. Now, like I said, there are times when the fun foods, if you will, have their place, and that's okay. I'm not speaking against those things, but we want the norm in our house to be real food. And so that's kind of changes the way the way I cook and the way I look at things as far as my easy go-tos. Anyway, so now I'm just cutting up some carrots, and then this will have some celery in it as well that I'll cut up here in just a second. And so it's carrots and celery and garlic, some other seasonings, parsley, basil, some salt, and just throw it all together. And then you'll see here in a minute, I cook whole chickens quite frequently. And while this recipe does not have any meat in it, it does call for chicken broth. And that is another thing. I try to not use chicken bouillon just because the flavoring that they use for that is not real nutritious. And so I try to use real chicken broth for recipes that call for it. And so what I do is when I cook a whole chicken, if I am not making a soup right then and using all the broth for that, I will store the broth. I will freeze it in old yogurt or sour cream containers in my freezer, and then I can get it out and use it for things like this, and it's already made. I just have to get it out early enough that it will be beginning to thaw at least. You'll see that on this particular day, it was still pretty slushy when I added it to the soup, but that's okay. Again, the Instant Pot will warm it up and it will thaw and be just fine. But that is a change that I have made over the last couple of years. I used to use the bouillon, and then, like I say, I went back to cooking whole chickens and getting the real chicken broth that way, and trying to just do that more, just as a way, again, that adds all that much more nutrition to what we're eating. And as long as I have some in the freezer, it's not that much extra work on the day that I'm making this. Like I said, I just had to pull it out of the freezer. Here is that chicken broth that I was talking about, and you can see that it's still not completely thawed, but it'll work. Like I say, after I get it kind of broken up, then I can add it in. Like I say, this is just a shift that I have tried to make in my cooking to add the extra nutrition to it and keep out some of the bad ingredients, because like I say, the store-bought or the chicken bouillon, the powder, is not very healthy. And so when I can make a better choice, I try to. I had to add a little bit extra water there because I didn't have quite enough broth to make up what liquid I needed. And like I say, as long as I stir it like this and make sure that the liquid gets to the bottom, those beans and that rice won't burn. And so it's really, really nice that I don't have to think about that. So this will cook for right at an hour, and then it will be ready to go. Once that gets done cooking, here it is, and I'll mix it all together because, as I said earlier, it's not mixed when I cook it, but this is about all the effort I have to put into it. I'll pull those bay leaves out and then put it in bowls, and it's ready to go. And everybody really likes this one. I realized this time around that I had forgotten to add the salt earlier, so that's why I'm putting that in now. That original recipe actually doesn't even call for salt. I think they're planning on you using, again, the store-bought chicken bouillon, which has a lot more sodium in it, so you don't need it when you do that. But because I'm using the real chicken broth, it doesn't have the salt flavor, so you have to add salt. So that's not on the recipe, so you'll see that in a minute. But I am still working out the exact amount that we want in ours, so I don't even have it written down. I just add some in, and we can add more at the table. So here's that recipe. I hope you give this one a try. And moving on to the last one that I want to share with you. This one is a little bit more involved, but I couldn't leave it out of my Instant Pot video because it's definitely a yummy one and fits right in with this time of year. So this is a pot roast recipe that I have found. I tried doing pot roasts or doing roasts in the crock pot for a lot of years, and I never could get them to be as falling apart tender as I wanted them to be. And so I started playing with the Instant Pot and realized that something about the pressure cooker makes all the difference in the world and seems to give the falling apart, tender taste, texture that I am looking for. And this time I'm actually using a venison hindquarter. So we hunt and frequently have venison in our freezer that we use for lots of different things. For ground meat, I like to have the hindquarters as roasts. And when we processed this deer, I went ahead and just cut the hindquarter up into chunks because I knew that it was going to be used in this way. So if you get, excuse me, if you get a whole roast, then from the store, just cut it up into chunks, and then you're going to mix together the seasonings that y'all saw me putting together there, and then rub it all over the different pieces of meat so that they are completely covered with the seasoning. And then from there, you will sear it in the Instant Pot. I just put it on the saute setting with a little bit of oil in the bottom of it, let it get hot, and then I will slowly work through those pieces of meat to make sure that they get browned on all sides. You just want it to sit there for a minute or two. It's not cooking at this point, obviously, it's just browning. It helps with the the flavors getting into the meat and just the overall finish of your roast. So that's what I'm doing here. Like I say, sometimes you have to work in batches on that first part because it doesn't all fit on the bottom of the pan. So I'll set what will fit in the Instant Pot in there, and then the other parts will have to wait, and then I'll take it out and rotate it through. I have talked on here on my channel before about the fact that, we are a one income household, and the fact that I try to make the best decisions with using the least amount of money possible. And right in that category is using the wild game. Number one, it's healthier. This is organic meat, y'all. I didn't have to pay organic prices. This is organic. All this deer has eaten is what they have been able to find out there in the fields, and maybe some corn out from under somebody's feeder. But as far as healthy meats, the wild game just about can't be beat. And you can't beat the price, as long as you're not having to pay an arm and a leg for a deer lease somewhere. This really helps fill in some gaps sometimes when you're trying to feed a family and you don't want to have to go pay the price for beef at the store. So being willing, and sometimes if you haven't grown up eating this way, or if you're not used to eating some of the different meats, it does taste a little different, and sometimes you have to get used to that. But sometimes being willing to try those new things, that will make a lot of difference, not just in this, but in a lot of areas when you're trying to cook or eat on a budget. Being willing to try something different and try to substitute something else out so that you can choose the less expensive option. And your kids see that too, and that's an important life skill, to be willing to try new things and experiment, and not be stuck with the same meals or the same foods that you have to prepare over and over. But anyway, y'all saw me there mixing up the liquid that's going to go in this roast. I used water on this day because I did not have any beef broth in my freezer or prepared for this roast. But again, you can use beef bouillon. I try to avoid it, so didn't use it here. I just used water, and then you add Worcestershire sauce and balsamic vinegar. And after I pull all this meat out, I will pour the juice in, and you'll see me use a spoon to kind of scrape the bottom, because you can see the black kind of stuck on stuff from that seasoning being there and that meat searing. And if you leave it like this and you put the roast back in, the Instant Pot will detect that there is something burning, and it will stop cooking, and you'll have to open it up and do this at some later point. So I find that if I sit here for a minute and use this spoon and kind of break loose the chunks, it's hot, so as soon as you add that liquid to it, it starts breaking loose pretty easy. But if you can get some of that stuff out of there, then you can add your meat back in, and it won't burn and it will cook well. So anyway, I'm gonna put these pieces back in there, stack it all in, and let it cook. This has to cook for about, I think it's 50 minutes. And then once that is done, you can either add the vegetables to the pot and the meat at that point, or you can take the meat out and put the vegetables in, which is what I do so that I can fit more potatoes and vegetables in rather than trying to just fit it on top of the meat. Again, when I'm trying to cook so that we make sure we have enough to eat twice, I would rather pull the meat out. So anyway, one thing that you can do to help yourself on the busy days is while you're already standing here, you've already been in the kitchen, go ahead and cut up those potatoes, onions, carrots, whatever vegetables you like to put in a roast. Oh, here, I realized after I had started it that I had kept that leg bone to put in here too, because the broth that you get when you cook a bone is very nutritious. And so I always try to use the bones if I have them. And again, this is organic, so why not? But I had forgot to put it in there, so I just had to open this back up and go ahead and add that in. And then I'll just, once it's done cooking, the bone gets thrown out, and I'll pull off whatever little bit of meat was still on there. But anyway, if you have time, go ahead and cut up your potatoes and carrots and onions when you're already in the kitchen, you're already working, and that way later on in the evening, you don't have to do that, and it makes it that much quicker. I don't know about y'all, in my household, the closer it gets to supper time and bedtime, the more hectic my home gets, the more my kids maybe need one-on-one attention, or the less I'm able to just kind of go and let them play. So if I can do things earlier in the evening, it tends to help my life go more smoothly. And so if you can take the time to do that, it certainly helps. I think on this particular day, I did not. So this is later in the evening when the roast is cooked or is finishing up its last couple of minutes. And so I'm cutting these vegetables up. And actually tried something new this time. The sweet potatoes that I was cutting up there, I realized as I was chopping up potatoes that I didn't have as many as I wanted for this, and decided to try the sweet potatoes for something new. We love to eat baked sweet potatoes, and we eat them a lot of different ways, but I hadn't ever put them in a roast. And so on this day, I just decided that I would try it since I wanted more potatoes in there to be more filling. Again, going back to being willing to try something new and not just be stuck with, well, if it's not a white potato, I can't do it. So anyway, and it actually turned out really good. Even the kids really liked it. So this is that roast now finished cooking. I will pull that meat out, like I said earlier, so that I will have room for all of those vegetables. And you'll see here in a minute, I'm going to cut up some carrots too to throw in there. One thing that I do that the recipe doesn't call for is making a gravy with that juice. So after the meat and the vegetables have all cooked, I will strain the liquid out of that pot and go to my stovetop and make just a simple gravy. So I just melt some butter, put some flour in it, and then use this broth as the liquid for my gravy, mix it up, and then put it back in the Instant Pot with the meat and the vegetables and mix it all together. It kind of becomes more like a soup than a traditional, roast that you would plate up with vegetables on the side. But this is how we've discovered that we like to eat it. And anyway, that's what I like to do. Like I said, I don't even really have a recipe for the gravy. It's just something that I kind of throw together, and it can be a pretty watery gravy because the potato starch, as that sits, once you put the gravy back in the pot with the potatoes and stuff, as that sits, it's going to thicken. So you don't have to have a perfect gravy to go in there. So there's those vegetables that are going to cook. And the wonderful thing is they only have to cook for about 3 minutes. So you've cooked the meat for an hour, and then you put this in here in 3 or 4 minutes, and you can have the vegetables cooked. And then here is that gravy that I'm going to make up. Again, just real quick. I know the other two recipes, I talked about how quick they were and how they were easy. And this one is a little bit more time intensive because there are some steps towards the end. You know, it's not just throw it in the pot, cook it, and then supper's ready. But I wanted to include it on here because this is one that I really like, that we really like. And like I say, when you're looking for ideas, well, what do I do with my Instant Pot? I feel like this is one way that I use it that has completely changed the way I look at roasts. I went from being someone who, like the venison roast, I wasn't real fond of them because you couldn't get them falling apart tender like you could a beef roast when I would cook them in a crock pot. And it wasn't until I started using the Instant Pot that I got the texture that I wanted. So this is definitely something that if you have an Instant Pot, if you like to eat roast, this is one to try. So that's why I had to go ahead and include it here. I hope y'all will give some of these recipes a try and, let me know in the comments. Thank y'all so much for joining me today, and I hope y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Bye. So here it is, and I'm going to add that gravy back into it. The vegetables are cooked, the meat's all torn up, and it is ready to go in a bowl and cool off for us to eat. I'm going to put that recipe here for y'all to see again like I did before. Thank y'all so much for watching this. I hope y'all try some of these recipes. Let me know if you do, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.